Welcome back to Subliminal Signals. My name's Carlton, and this is my shiny head. If you've been following along, you know we're on a mission to identify and reset the thought patterns that keep you stuck in cycles you didn't even realize you were in. Now, over the past 2 weeks, we've tackled I should be further along by now, and if I can't do it right, I shouldn't do it at all. And I really appreciate all the feedback that I've gotten from my beta testers of the podcast. Um, and I hope that we don't let these subliminal signals derail our forward progress. But today, we're diving into what might be the sneakiest subliminal signal of all. It's the one that sounds supportive, even wise. It's the thought that makes you feel like you're being smart and strategic when you're actually sabotaging yourself. Today's signal is I need to know it's going to work before I try. So, here we go with the guaranteed plan. I have been in mentorship groups for a while now. And one of the things that I've noticed, especially as I've talked with people in the different groups and I've worked with clients, right, is that people are always looking for the guarantee. When I talk with folks about, coming and joining me or joining me and letting me be their coach, one of the first questions I get is what's your guarantee? What's your success rate? And one thing that I know is that there is no guarantee. There is no success rate that is 100% guaranteed. We learned this from the perfectionism trap from last week. And on the surface, making sure that you have all your ducks in a row before you get started, making sure that um, you know, you do your due diligence, right? Those sound reasonable. They might even sound smart. I mean, who wouldn't want certainty before taking a big leap? But this is what's really happening, especially in the case of one of my clients, right? That I need to know it's going to work is just a sophisticated form of procrastination. I know for me and for this particular client, right? That guarantee, the guarantee doesn't exist. And if you're waiting until something that doesn't exist actually exists, you're never going to get started. You're looking for permission to stay where you are because you don't want to take on the challenge. So we have a person, when I'm talking about this particular client, they had been waiting for 3 years to start the business. The same way that I was stuck in the cycle of trying to have the perfect business plan or the perfect website or the perfect whatever, trying to make sure that my market was guaranteed to, uh, get me the success that I was looking for. But the thing was, it's with this particular client and with me, right? Waiting on that perfect business was really sabotaging and keeping them and me from the thing that was really most important, the growth that comes from doing the work. Because certainty is an illusion. That certainty doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in business, it doesn't exist in relationships. No creative pursuit has certainty. Definitely not in this life. And I remember, so I'm gonna put my nerd hat on for a second. I love Star Trek, and Captain Picard is one of my favorite captains. And he said in one of the episodes, "You can do everything right and still fail. That is life." And that's a paraphrase, it's not the exact quote. But that is so true. You can do all of the things right. You can put all of the plans in place, and things can still fail. You can go on that first date and plan it out so that everything is perfect, and that person can still not be into you at the end of the day. Um, I mean, think about it. When you started on your first job or when you took you started in your career, did you know you'd actually succeed? For me, I think back, from a relationship perspective, was I certain that I was going to marry my then girlfriend, right? Was I certain that relationship was gonna work out? Absolutely not. In fact, I tried everything I could unintentionally to sabotage our relationship going forward. But that's a story for a different podcast. But in all honesty, you knew that you didn't have a 100% guarantee, but you took action anyway, and you figured it out along the way. And that's the thing that I want us to learn as we talk about this particular subliminal signal. Um, we have to figure out, how do we get past this? Like, what is it about that certainty that we need? We're trying to get past the fear, right? And that's what's going on in your brain when you're stuck in that "I need to know it's going to work" thinking. This is where we get caught up in certainty bias. It's where we prefer known outcomes over unknown ones. It's how our brains work. I talked about this before, about how our brain is a pattern matcher, right? So our brain is trying to keep us in the same rut all the time. The brain doesn't even see it as a rut, it sees it as safe. And so that certainty bias makes it so that we stay in the safe place and don't try and go for something that we don't know is going to work out. And this is something that, because in our ancestors' lives, right, uncertainty was dangerous, it was life threatening. But we've got to understand, in our modern world, that thinking, that bias keeps us stuck. It keeps us trapped in situations that might be safe, but they're really unfulfilling. When you demand certainty before taking action, you're asking your brain to predict a future based on past data. And as everybody who's ever listened to one of those financial commercials knows, past performance is not indicative of future success. But and that's the problem. Those breakthrough moments, by definition, involve doing something that you haven't done before. It's a breakthrough. You broke through those old patterns of thinking, and your brain has no data for that. So it defaults to fear based scenarios and worst case thinking. Remember that prefrontal cortex, that part of your brain that does all the problem solving and creative thinking? When you get into that worst case thinking, that fear based scenario, that part shuts off. We talked about it, it goes away. But if we can engage that part of the mind, you'll be able to do so much more, so much more. And you can get caught in that analysis paralysis, and you'll collect more information. You'll look for that perfect plan and you'll be stuck. But if we can engage your mind the right way, you will see success, even if that success doesn't look the way that you think it should. Because not all information is created equal. The understanding, and you really need to understand the difference. You need to break free from that validation trap. So here's the two types of information. One is thinking information. This is the stuff you research online. You analyze the data, you plan the scenarios, you make and don't get me wrong, that stuff is good. Like, having that data is a good thing. But it also makes you feel productive rather than actually having you make forward progress. But it makes you feel like you're in control. The second type of information is the doing information. This is the feedback you can only get through taking action. This is when you go to a customer and you tell them about your offer and you get a response from them. This is how your body feels when you're doing the work, right? What actually happens when the challenges show up versus what you imagined would be the problem. So here's an example. Today, I got a message on TikTok from someone asking me about the services that I offer. And specifically, they wanted to talk about pricing. Now, pricing is something that's always was always a difficult thing for me. And I believe me, I spend a lot of time thinking about pricing for my services. And in the past, that type of question would have shut me down completely, because I would have been like, oh, hemmed and hawed around it, right? But now I'm certain that I can give my pricing. And if that person is not happy with the pricing or doesn't like the pricing, that's okay. N- My services are not for everyone. But that was from actually having those pricing conversations over and over and over and over again that brought that confidence out. When I was stuck in trying to have that figure out the perfect pricing model, I didn't do anything. I was doing market research, I was doing surveys, I was asking other coaches, I was talking to other hypnotherapists, I was doing all this other stuff, but I wasn't actually talking to clients and telling them. And so when I had a conversation with a client about my pricing and they were like, "Oh, absolutely. Let me write you a check. Let me go on your website and make a payment." Those are the people that I'm looking for. But that took the confidence of actually getting the no's, right? So in one of my coaching groups, and this goes back to when I was doing sales, way back in the olden days. One of our games that we played was the no game. When you go out and you're prospecting, you're going out and you're talking to people about what you do, you want to get as many no's as possible. And you want to get as many no's as you can, like back to back to back to back. Because I guarantee you, the more presentations you give, the more asks that you make, eventually you're going to get a yes. But you've got to get so many no's. So our goal, I think, was like 10 no's in a row, right? So if you could get 10 no's in a row, you could stop. You can stop talking to new people. And for an introvert like me, I'm like, yeah, how do I sign up for that? Right. But I learned that if I tried to get those 10 no's, somebody was going to say yes before I got to 10. But by the time I got two or three no's in, I was confident in what I was saying because I was learning what would work. I was gaining confidence in what I was offering. And this is what happened with the client too. So as we got her past that analysis paralysis and got her actually going forward and talking to people about her business and sharing her offer, she began to see the cracks in her presentation. She began to see and make course corrections to success, get the success that she needed. And she actually landed her first few clients and figured out how to build a pipeline so that now she's always got clients in the wings waiting to work with her. But she would never have gotten there if she had stayed in her spreadsheets. So how do we move forward? What does this mean for you? What can you do? Now, I'm a software developer, and one of the things that we do, in when we're working, like in the development world, is we have something called the minimum viable product. And that means this is the thing that you build that meets a certain portion of the need, but gets the needle moving forward, right? So instead of waiting for your perfection, instead of trying to figure out and finding the certainty, I want you to find out what is your minimum viable certainty. What's the certain amount of confidence you need to take your first step? It's not gonna get you directly and all the way to the end, but it's gonna get you moving forward. So for my client, it was getting her to actually have a conversation with a prospect. So not worrying about sending them to her website, not worrying about any of that, but getting on a phone call with a prospect and talking about her offer. When she could do that, it helped to clarify everything she was putting on her website. It helped to clarify all of her marketing materials. It helped to clarify what she was actually trying to offer to people by talking about it. But she would never have gotten there, like I mentioned, if she hadn't figured out what was that minimum viable certainty. She had an offer, she needed to communicate it. And that's the beautiful thing about that minimum viable certainty is that it compounds. So the more she talked, the more feedback she got, the more changes she could make, which and created more certainty and more confidence in every conversation that she had. And she now has a waiting list of clients, right? So she's not even having to like scrounge around trying to find people in her business. She's got a waiting list of people that are there. So I want the same for you. So that leads into today's homework or this week's homework. Instead of, I need to know it's going to work before I try, I want you to try this. Say this instead. I need to know it's worth testing before I commit. And here's why this works. Identify something you've been putting off because you need more certainty, and ask yourself, what's the smallest version of this I could test? Set a low stakes experiment, something that takes less than a week, costs less than $100. The goal is information, not perfection. You're committing to learning, not succeeding. Then you take the action and gather the data. So here's some examples. Instead of planning the perfect business, offer your services to one person. Instead of researching the perfect workout routine, try a workout class, just one. Instead of mapping out the perfect creative project, make one small thing. I was really excited when my wife got into painting a few years back because number one, I can't paint. And I thought it was amazing that she just decided she wanted to paint. But here's what she did. She didn't try and create the Mona Lisa. She just wanted to get a straight line. And I watched her painting skill grow with every canvas she worked on. And that's all you've got to do. Commit to one thing, low stakes, and see and get the feedback that you need to know, the feedback you need. And have the courage to not know. We live in a culture that celebrates confidence, even if that confidence is more like bravado. The confidence says, I know this will work, but courage is what I want you to have. Courage says, I don't know if this will work, but I'm going to find out. Confidence is based on certainty, but your courage is based on your values. When you act with courage, you're saying, this matters enough to me that I'm willing to risk not knowing how it's going to turn out. And trust me, that's what people most admire. The entrepreneurs, the artists, the leaders, the innovators, they didn't get where they are because they had guarantees. They got there because they were willing to act without them. Every person who's ever started a business, created something new, or changed their life in a significant way, um, anybody who's created a business or started something new or changed their life in a significant way has had to face this moment. The moment when you have to choose between the safety of not knowing and the growth that comes from finding out. So this week I want you to practice. I want you to practice getting comfortable with not knowing. So not just in big things but small things too. I want you to try a new restaurant without reading all the reviews first. Take a different route to work without mapping it out. Start a conversation without knowing what you're going to say. I want you to notice how it feels to act without certainty. Notice what you feel in your body. Notice, more importantly, that you can handle not knowing. Notice that uncertainty doesn't have to be paralyzing. Notice that it can be energizing. Because here's what I've learned, that people are most comfortable with uncertainty. The people who are most comfortable with uncertainty, they're the ones who create more certainty in their lives. They build confidence through action, not thought. They create security by trusting their ability to handle whatever comes, not by trying to control what comes. And that's a subtle but important shift that I want you to make this week. Move from planning mode to playing mode. Planning mode says, how can I guarantee that this will work? Playing mode says, playing mode says, how can I find out if this is fun? Planning mode is heavy and serious and full of pressure, but playing mode is light, curious, and experimental. Planning mode demands certainty before action. Playing mode uses action to create certainty. When you're in playing mode, failure isn't devastating, it's information. When you're in playing mode, you're not trying to get it right the first time. You're trying to learn something you can use for the next time. Now, this doesn't mean being careless or reckless. It means being experimental and adaptive. It means treating your life like a laboratory where you get to test the hypothesis, not a courthouse where you're judged for every decision. And if you're ready to practice acting without guarantees, join the story shift circle. Another challenge I'm thinking about running is the small test challenge. I used to do this thing on my blog years ago, what we called the 30-day trial, where we would pick a goal and we would say, we're going to commit to this goal for 30 days because I feel like you can do anything for 30 days, right? And then at the end of the 30 days, decide whether or not it's for you. So I like that idea. I might have to bring that back. But anyway, it's not about getting results. It's about getting comfortable with not knowing the results before you start. It's about building your tolerance for uncertainty so that you can take bigger, more meaningful risks when they matter. The link for the Story Shift Circle will be in the show notes. And until next time, remember you don't need to know it's going to work. You just need to know it's worth finding out. The certainty you're seeking isn't found in research or planning or preparation, it's found in action. It's built through experience. It's created by trusting yourself to handle whatever comes next. The world doesn't need you to have all the answers. It needs you to be willing to ask the questions that can only be answered by trying. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being willing to step into uncertainty with me. Thanks for choosing courage over comfort. See you next week for another subliminal signal that's probably keeping you smaller than you're meant to be. Until then, keep resetting and remember, the path is made by walking, not planning the perfect route.